Tiana sat at her kitchen table, staring at the last $8 she had in the world. The bills were wrinkled and soft from being folded and unfolded too many times, as if even money itself was tired of being in her hands. Her refrigerator hummed in the background, nearly empty except for a bottle of water and half a jar of peanut butter. Her little brother, Jordan, was asleep in the next room. He was only 9 but had the kind of quiet wisdom that comes from growing up too fast. Their mom used to fill the house with laughter, gospel music, and the smell of fried chicken on Sundays. But now the apartment felt too big, too quiet. Their mother had passed 2 months earlier after a long battle with diabetes, leaving Tiana as the only one holding everything together. At 22, she'd become both sister and mother overnight. Between 2 part-time jobs and overdue rent, she was barely holding on. Some days, she'd skip meals so Jordan wouldn't have to. But even through exhaustion and empty cupboards, she never let him see her cry. She pressed the $8 flat against the table, whispering, "Okay, we can make this work." The plan was simple: grab a few essentials, make dinner stretch, and pray something good would happen before the week ended. Hope wasn't something she could afford to lose. She grabbed her keys, wrapped her hair in a scarf, and headed out to her beat-up Civic. The engine coughed like it didn't want to start, but it did. The drive to the convenience store was short, lined with empty lots and flickering streetlights. The kind of place dreams went to hide when life got too hard. Inside the store, she moved slowly through the aisles, a loaf of bread, some eggs, and a can of soup. She added up every price in her head, double-checked the total, and sighed. Just under $8. Perfect. As she waited in line, she heard the sound of heavy boots behind her. The man who walked in didn't look like he belonged there. He was older, rough around the edges, his beard streaked with gray and his leather vest covered in patches. His presence made everyone shift uncomfortably, even the cashier glanced up warily. He carried a helmet under his arm and looked like he'd been through something. His right hand was trembling slightly as he grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler. When he reached the counter, he fumbled with his wallet, muttering curses under his breath. "Cards declined," the cashier said flatly. The man frowned, tried again. Same result. He sighed and stepped aside, shaking his head. Tiana could see the frustration written all over his face. He looked like someone who didn't ask for help often, or ever. The cashier rolled her eyes. Next. Tiana stepped forward, clutching her basket. But something inside her wouldn't let her ignore what she just saw. "Hey," she said softly, turning to the man. "You okay?" He avoided her eyes. "Yeah. Just forgot my cards maxed. Don't worry about it." He started toward the door, but she called out, "Wait." She didn't think, she just acted. She took a breath, reached into her pocket, and pulled out the $8. "Here," she said, handing it to the cashier. "Add his stuff to mine." The biker blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Nah, don't do that. I don't take charity." "It's not charity," she said gently. "It's a sandwich and some water. You looked like you needed it." He stared at her, this small woman in worn jeans and a faded hoodie, with eyes full of quiet strength, and for a second, he couldn't find the words. Finally, he nodded. "You sure?" She smiled faintly. "I'm sure." The cashier shrugged and rang them both up. The total came to exactly $7.89. As Tiana handed over her last bills, her chest tightened, but she didn't regret it. The biker picked up his things, hesitated, then said, "Thank you, miss." "Tiana," she replied. "Duke," he said, holding out his hand. His palm was calloused, his handshake firm but unsure. "I owe you one." "You don't owe me anything," she said with a soft laugh. "Just pay it forward." Duke's eyes flickered with something unreadable, guilt, maybe, or surprise. "You always this kind?" She shrugged. "Trying to be." When she left the store, she didn't realize he was still watching her. The girl who had nothing yet gave everything she had without hesitation. That night, Tiana made toast and soup for dinner. Jordan asked why she wasn't eating. She smiled and said she'd eaten earlier, watching him slurp noodles with the innocence she was trying so hard to protect. After he went to bed, she sat by the window, staring out into the dark. Her stomach growled, but her heart felt lighter somehow. Helping Duke hadn't changed her situation. The bills were still due, the job was still uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, she felt useful. She felt human again. She whispered to herself, maybe Mom was right. You don't need much to do good. Then came the next morning. The ground shook before she even understood what was happening. The deep, rolling thunder of engines echoed through the street, growing louder and louder until the walls seemed to vibrate. She pulled the curtains open, and froze. The road outside her apartment was filled with motorcycles. Dozens of them. Maybe 100. All lined up in neat rows, engines rumbling like an army waiting for orders. The neighbors peeked out their windows, whispering. A few older folks stepped onto porches, unsure whether to be scared or amazed. Then she saw him, Duke. Cleaned up, his arm bandaged, standing proudly beside a gleaming Harley. Tiana's heart raced. He saw her in the window and gave a small wave. Then he shouted, Tiana. You might want to come outside. She hesitated. What's going on? She called back through the screen. Just a little thank you, Duke said with a grin. When she opened her door, the air smelled like gasoline, leather, and something else, excitement. The bikers stood in a wide semicircle, their jackets bearing the same emblem Duke had worn. Behind them were trucks, filled with groceries, boxes, and bags. Tiana's jaw dropped. What is all this? Duke walked up to her, his boots crunching on the gravel. You gave me your last $8. I told my brothers about it. We figured it's our turn to give something back. Her eyes filled instantly with tears. Groceries, one of the men said, lifting a crate. Clothes. Toys for your little man. And there's something else too. Another biker handed her an envelope. Inside was a check. Enough to cover her rent and bills for months. Tiana couldn't speak. Duke looked at her softly. We've all seen a lot out on those roads, Tiana. Not many people stop to help anymore. But you did. You reminded us there's still good left out there. She laughed through her tears. I didn't think it would matter this much. It mattered more than you know, he said. Sometimes one small act changes everything. The crowd of bikers nodded in agreement, the engines slowly dying down, leaving only silence, the kind that fills your chest when something good finally happens. But this wasn't just a moment of gratitude. It was the start of something that would shake her entire life. Because what Duke hadn't told her yet, was that she hadn't just saved him that day. She had saved someone else too. The engines faded into silence, leaving behind the smell of exhaust and a heavy stillness that wrapped around the street. Tiana stood barefoot on the front step, holding the envelope in trembling hands. Duke and the other bikers waited quietly, their leather vests gleaming in the sunlight. She looked down at the check again, unable to believe what she was seeing. Duke, this is too much, she said finally. I can't take all this. Yes, you can, Duke said. You didn't ask for it, and that's exactly why you deserve it. Tiana shook her head. You don't even know me. Why would you all do this for some girl you met at a convenience store? Duke smiled faintly. Because that, some girl, did what no one else would. You saw a man nobody else would look twice at and treated him like a person. He gestured toward the bikes behind him. Most of these men come from hard roads. Prison, poverty, loss. People cross the street when they see us. But you didn't even flinch. Tiana wiped her eyes, struggling to hold back her tears. I didn't think it was a big deal. It was, he said softly. More than you can imagine. He took a step closer, holding something in his hand, a small, worn photograph. It looked old, the corners bent, the edges faded. He placed it gently into her palm. On it was a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, sitting on the shoulders of a smiling man who looked younger, happier, and freer than the Duke standing before her now. "That's my daughter," he said quietly. "Her name's Lacey." Tiana studied the photo, then looked back at him. "She's beautiful." Duke nodded, his voice breaking slightly. "She was. She passed away 5 years ago. Car accident. Her mom too." The air shifted, heavy with silence. Tiana's heart ached. "I'm so sorry." He exhaled slowly. "After that, I lost myself. I left everything behind. Started riding again, ran with the club full time. Some days I didn't care if I woke up. That day you saw me, I wasn't just out of gas, Tiana. I was done. I was tired of living." Her eyes widened. "You mean?" He nodded. "I didn't plan to make it home. I'd been drinking, I crashed the bike earlier that day. I was gonna just let it happen. Then you came along. You didn't know it, but when you stopped to help me, you pulled me back. You didn't just patch up my arm, you gave me a reason to keep breathing. Tiana pressed her hand over her mouth. The weight of his words sank deep. "That's why I said you saved her too," Duke continued, voice thick with emotion. "Because when you saved me, you saved what's left of her memory. You reminded me that not everyone's gone cold." Tiana's tears fell freely now. I didn't know. I was just trying to do what my mom would have done." Duke nodded, smiling sadly. "Then your mom raised one hell of a woman." Behind them, some of the bikers shifted, wiping their eyes discreetly. These were men covered in tattoos, men who looked like they could bend steel, and yet they stood in silence, moved by the sight of this young woman and their brother who'd finally found peace. "Duke told us about that day," one of the bikers said gruffly. "He said you treated him like family. We figured it's time somebody treated you the same way." Another stepped forward, a tall man with long blonde hair and a weathered face. "We ain't the kind of family people brag about," he said, "but we take care of our own." They began unloading more boxes. One of them carried a small generator, another, a second-hand washer and dryer. Someone brought a used laptop for Jordan. Tiana could barely speak. "You all didn't have to do this." "Yeah," Duke said. "But we wanted to." As they worked, the sound of laughter filled the air, the kind of laughter that hadn't been heard on that street in years. Kids came out to help carry boxes, neighbors offered drinks, and even the grumpy landlord showed up looking confused. Jordan ran out onto the porch, rubbing his eyes. "T, what's going on?" She knelt down, smiling through tears. "Remember when I told you good things come back around?" He nodded. "Well," she said, hugging him tight, "they came back." One of the bikers crouched down beside him. "You like bikes, little man?" Jordan's face lit up. "Yeah." The biker grinned and gestured toward a small motorcycle with training wheels. "This one's yours. Don't worry, it's electric. Won't wake the neighbors." The boy gasped and threw his arms around the biker's neck. Everyone laughed. Hours passed, and by the time the sun began to dip below the trees, the street looked like a festival. There was food, music, and a warmth that seemed to soak into every soul present. Tiana sat on her porch with Duke, watching it all unfold. "You really didn't have to do all this," she said softly. He leaned back, looking thoughtful. "When I was your age, I thought strength meant never needing anyone. Turns out, real strength's about showing up for people who do." She smiled. "You think I'm strong?" "I know you are," he said. You gave away your last dollar and still smiled. That's real power. She laughed quietly, shaking her head. I don't even know how to thank you all. Don't, he said. Just promise me one thing. Anything. When life gives you more than you need, you pass it on. Just like you did for me. Tiana nodded, her heart full. Deal. As the bikers began to pack up, Duke stayed behind for a moment. He handed her a small keychain, a silver wing with a skull engraved on it. What's this? She asked. Angel wing, he said with a smile. Means you got friends on the road now. Anytime you see this patch, he pointed to the emblem on his vest, your family. She clutched it tight. Thank you, Duke. For everything. He started his bike, revved the engine, and called out over the roar, Nah, Tiana, thank you. You reminded a lost man what grace looks like. The engines roared back to life, one by one, until the sound rolled through the street like thunder. The neighbors waved as the line of motorcycles disappeared down the road, leaving behind dust, echoes, and a changed neighborhood. When the last engine faded, Tiana looked at Jordan, who stood beside her, eyes wide with wonder. Did that really just happen? He asked. She smiled and hugged him close. Yeah, baby. It really did. Later that night, after the noise and excitement had faded, Tiana sat by the window again, the same spot where she'd counted her last $8 the day before. Only now, the fridge was full, her rent was paid, and the world outside didn't seem so cruel. She looked down at the keychain in her hand and whispered, Mom, I think I finally understand. You were right. You don't need much to do good. You just need a heart willing to give. A soft breeze drifted through the open window, rustling the curtains. And for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. Somewhere miles away, on a lonely stretch of highway, Duke rode beneath a crimson sunset. The wind whipped against his jacket, the photograph of his daughter tucked safely inside his vest. For the first time in years, his heart felt light. He looked up at the sky and whispered, She saved me, Lacey. That girl saved me. And with that, the road ahead didn't seem so lonely anymore. Because one act of kindness, one simple moment of humanity, had bound two broken souls together forever. And in that connection, both had found something they thought they'd lost long ago. Hope.